The history of medicine is often praised as a journey of saving lives. But hidden behind that shining glory are inventions once hailed as miracles, only to quickly turn into nightmares. These drugs, devices, and methods once brought hope, but were later buried in shame and horror. These are the medical inventions that were once celebrated, and then vanished forever. Cocaine, the miracle drug of the 19th century. By the late 19th century, the Western world was desperate for a medicine that could ease pain, boost energy, and support the progress of modern science. When cocaine appeared, it was quickly hailed as a wonder. Doctors used it as an anesthetic during surgery. Dentists dripped it directly onto patients' teeth, and bottles of syrups and lozenges laced with cocaine were openly sold in pharmacies. Laborers drank it to fight fatigue, while intellectuals saw it as a potion that could expand the mind. Even Sigmund Freud, the famed psychologist, wrote glowing praises, convinced that cocaine would open a new era for the human spirit. During that period, cocaine was infused into all kinds of products: soft drinks, wines, even tonics for children. Advertisements proudly called it the miracle of the century, claiming it could cure illness while bringing happiness. People truly believed they were holding a gift from medical science. But soon, the darkness crept in. In just a short time, patients began to collapse. Irregular heartbeats, hallucinations, crippling addiction that drained the body. Some screamed in delirium, while others' hearts stopped in the very height of euphoria. The artificial happiness cocaine provided turned out to be nothing more than a deadly trap. By the early 20th century, governments were forced to impose strict bans, eventually outlawing cocaine in medicine altogether. From being the miracle drug of its age, it became forever tied to crime and addiction. A bitter reminder that, even at its most celebrated, medicine can sometimes unleash shadows of death. Radium, the glow that led to death. When Marie Curie discovered radium at the end of the 19th century, the world was shaken. This strange, luminous substance was hailed as the very energy of life, a light of immortality. Doctors and manufacturers rushed to turn radium into a miracle cure. It was added to skin creams, tonics, even candies and drinks. One famous mineral water, Radithor, was marketed as the elixir of eternal youth, promising endless vitality. Wealthy gentlemen drank it daily, convinced that its glow was nourishing every cell of their bodies. Advertisements of the time claimed radium could cure almost anything: fatigue, arthritis, even impotence. One sip, 10 more years of life. That was the sweet promise of early 20th century medicine. There were even glowing cosmetics, designed so women could have skin that quite literally radiated beauty. But that glow soon revealed a horrifying shadow. Radithor users began losing teeth, suffering bone pain, their bodies wasting away. One American millionaire, Eben Byers, reportedly consumed thousands of bottles until his jawbone rotted and his face began to disintegrate. His gruesome death shocked the public and forced authorities to intervene. From a symbol of youth, radium became known as the smile of death. And when its glow finally faded, humanity learned a grim truth. Not every light gives life. Some lights only lead the way to death. Mercury, healing with poison. From the Middle Ages up until the 19th century, mercury was praised as a miraculous medicine. Doctors prescribed it for syphilis, skin diseases, and even brewed it into potions for children. They believed mercury could cleanse the body, driving away evil spirits and illness. Patients who sweated, trembled, and drooled uncontrollably were told these were signs that the cure was working. But no one realized this shimmering metal was actually a slow-acting poison. Teeth began to fall out, mouths ulcerated, skin peeled away. Worse still, the nervous system crumbled. Memories faded, behavior grew erratic, and many slipped into madness. Within the medical world, a haunting phrase was whispered: "A night with Venus, a lifetime with Mercury," meaning that one night of venereal disease condemned you to a lifetime of poisonous treatment. Tragically, for centuries, no one questioned it. Emperors, nobles, even great scholars trusted this silvery liquid, only to have their bodies eaten away in agony. By the time modern science revealed its deadly truth, millions of lives had already been destroyed. Today, Mercury lingers in our collective memory as a grim reminder. Some so-called miracles do not heal disease. They only plant another one, the disease born of blind faith. Bloodletting, the crimson ritual that lasted 2,000 years. For more than 2 millennia, Western medicine believed that all diseases stemmed from an imbalance of humors within the body, and the way to restore that balance was to let the blood flow out. From the Greeks and Romans to medieval Europe, bloodletting was treated like a sacred ritual. From kings to peasants, no one was spared this practice. A fever? Open a vein. A headache? Cover the skin with leeches. Blood poured out in streams, and physicians declared, "The sickness is leaving the body." But the reality was far darker. Patients often collapsed from exhaustion, dizziness, and many died right there on the treatment bed. One of the most infamous cases was George Washington, the very first president of the United States. When he suffered a throat infection, doctors drained nearly half the blood in his body. Within hours, Washington was dead, not from the illness, but from the cure itself. The haunting truth is that this ritual endured for thousands of years. Countless lives were cut short, not by disease, but by the cold edge of a blade and the weight of misguided faith. Today, bloodletting survives only in a few rare medical applications. Yet the memory of that crimson legacy still reminds us, sometimes the fastest path to death is the very thing people believe will save them. Lobotomy, the surgery that stole souls. In the 20th century, psychiatric hospitals were overflowing with patients, society was fearful, and doctors were desperate for a cure. Then came a method hailed as a miracle, the lobotomy. All it required was inserting a sharp instrument, like an ice pick, through the eye socket, into the brain, and destroying parts of neural tissue. Physicians believed this could erase aggression, anxiety, and hallucinations. At first, the results stunned the world. Patients became quieter, less agitated, seemingly more obedient. Newspapers called lobotomy a revolution in psychiatric medicine. Its inventor was even awarded the Nobel Prize in Medicine, one of the highest honors in science. But behind the glow of praise lay tragedy. Thousands of patients lost their memories, their emotions, their very essence, reduced to breathing shells of their former selves. They no longer raged, but neither could they love, rejoice, or truly live. Many spent the rest of their days in soulless silence, abandoned in the very hospitals meant to heal them. When the truth came to light, lobotomy was condemned as one of the most brutal mistakes in medical history. The cruel irony, what was once celebrated as a humane miracle, became a nightmare that stole away the human soul. Heroin, the non-addictive cough medicine. In 1898, the pharmaceutical giant Bayer, later famous for aspirin, introduced a brand new product, heroin. It was marketed loudly as a safer, non-addictive alternative to morphine, especially for pain relief and cough suppression. Advertisements proudly declared non-addictive, safe even for children. And so, heroin quickly appeared in cough syrups, lozenges, and even family tonics. Doctors rejoiced. At last, they had a substitute for morphine that seemed gentler. Patients took heroin to treat pneumonia, tuberculosis, and bronchitis. Children were dosed when their coughs lingered. Parents genuinely believed they were protecting their families with a miracle drug. But within just a few years, the nightmare revealed itself. Patients began showing signs of deep dependence. When the drug wore off, they shook uncontrollably, drenched in sweat, writhing in pain. To escape the torment, they reached again for heroin, and the vicious cycle of addiction was born. Soon, society was gripped by a new kind of epidemic. People were not dying from illness, but from the very drug once declared completely safe. By 1924, the United States and many other nations were forced to outlaw heroin in medicine. From being called a medicine of compassion, it became a worldwide symbol of addiction and crime. A bitter reminder that sometimes what is sold as salvation may be nothing more than the gateway to hell. Electroshock Therapy. Hope turned into nightmare. In the 1930s, when psychiatry was still shrouded in uncertainty, a radical idea emerged: using electricity to cure mental illness. Doctors believed that the violent seizures triggered by electric shocks could reset the brain, like restarting a broken machine. At first, it was hailed as a miracle. Patients with schizophrenia, severe depression, and anxiety disorders were strapped down, electrodes attached to their heads, and jolts of electricity sent through their skulls. Newspapers described cases where patients seemed calmer afterward, less tormented by hallucinations. Doctors proclaimed it a new dawn for psychiatric medicine. But behind this facade lay a much darker truth, one the patients endured in silence. Without anesthesia or muscle relaxants, they were shocked fully conscious. Bodies convulsed violently, bones snapped, tongues bled from being bitten. Memories vanished. Some forgot their families, even their own names. And when the treatment ended, many awoke to a terror greater than the illness itself. What began as therapy soon became legalized torture. The early smiles of optimism faded, replaced by hollow eyes filled with dread. By the late 20th century, electroshock therapy faced harsh condemnation, restricted only to rare cases under far safer methods. Once celebrated as a savior, it is now remembered as one of the darkest shadows in the history of psychiatry. The Dalkon Shield, a tragedy of birth control. In the 1970s, as the women's liberation movement surged forward, one invention was hailed as a revolutionary breakthrough: the Dalkon Shield, a small, spider-shaped plastic intrauterine device. Marketed as safe, convenient, and nearly foolproof, it quickly gained the trust of millions of women around the world. But behind the flawless marketing lay a deadly flaw. The shield's nylon string was left unsealed, turning it into a direct pathway for bacteria to invade the uterus. Thousands of women began to suffer horrific complications: severe infections, permanent infertility, and even death from sepsis. What made the tragedy worse was the response. When victims spoke out, the manufacturer initially denied responsibility, blaming user error. Yet internal reports had already warned of the risks, truth buried beneath profit and reputation. By the time tens of thousands of lawsuits erupted, the damage was irreversible, families shattered, lives destroyed, all because of a medical solution once celebrated as a symbol of freedom. The Dalkon Shield was eventually pulled from the market, remembered now as one of the greatest medical scandals of the 20th century. And it left behind a haunting question. In the race for profit, how many so-called inventions of liberation are really just traps laced with blood and tears? Fen-Phen, the deadly diet pill. In the 1990s, when the slim figure became the ultimate standard of beauty, America was swept into a frenzy of weight loss obsession. And then came Fen-Phen, a combination of fenfluramine and phentermine, hailed as a miracle solution. Within just a few years, millions of prescriptions were handed out to those desperate to shed pounds quickly. Fen-Phen was praised as the golden key to the perfect body, a groundbreaking leap in medical science. Newspapers, television, even doctors themselves fueled its rise as the symbol of a weight loss revolution. But soon, cracks began to show. Thousands of patients reported strange symptoms: irregular heartbeats, shortness of breath, even heart failure. Many were diagnosed with pulmonary hypertension, a rare, nearly incurable disease. Worse still, Fen-Phen caused devastating damage to heart valves, leaving victims with lifelong scars. In 1997, after a wave of shocking medical reports, the FDA ordered Fen-Phen off the market. From being a beauty miracle, it had turned into a silent killer. Pharmaceutical companies faced tens of thousands of lawsuits, forced to pay billions of dollars in compensation to victims who had traded their health, and sometimes their very lives, for a few lost pounds. Fen-Phen remains an indelible stain on the history of modern medicine, a grim reminder that behind the glittering promise of miracle pills, there often lurks a terrible price. And sometimes, the obsession with beauty doesn't just destroy the soul. It can steal the very last beat of the heart. DDT, the miracle drug to kill mosquitoes. During World War II, When malaria and insect-borne plagues were claiming hundreds of thousands of lives, a new chemical was hailed as a scientific wonder: DDT, dichlorodiphenyl trichloroethane. DDT was celebrated as a miracle. It wiped out mosquitoes, lice, and fleas almost instantly. After the war, it spilled over into civilian life. Fields were blanketed in DDT, houses were sprayed from floor to ceiling, and propaganda films even showed children playing joyfully under clouds of this magic dust. Governments promoted it as the very symbol of progress, an answer to food security and public health. But then, the hidden cost began to surface. DDT didn't vanish. It lingered, seeping into soil, water, and the bodies of living creatures. It built up in the food chain, driving bird populations into collapse, and pushing top predators like bald eagles and falcons to the brink of extinction. And humans weren't spared either. Later studies linked DDT to cancer, reproductive disorders, and immune system damage. In 1962, Rachel Carson's groundbreaking book Silent Spring ignited a storm of outrage. The world suddenly realized that this so-called miracle was, in truth, a ticking time bomb. By the 1970s, one nation after another banned DDT, transforming it from a wartime savior into one of modern science's most infamous disgraces. DDT stands as a chilling reminder. No matter how brightly an invention shines, there may always be a shadow lurking beneath, one that only reveals itself when it's already too late. These inventions were once hailed as the shining lights of progress, only for history to expose their darker side. But what about today? Could there be a miracle cure we worship now? That one day will be unmasked, just like the names you've just heard? Share your thoughts in the comments, because your perspective might be the very spark that makes others see modern medicine through an entirely new lens.